Okay, so how are you?
I'm doing great. And by the way, I don't know, you may know about this already, but remember that movie Quantum Suicide that
Yeah,
was at
yeah.
the Philip K. Dick
Uh-huh.
Festival a couple of months ago? Gerrit Van Woudenberg directed it, put
Sure.
it together. Well, a couple of things. I just saw the other day that it's going to be up on Amazon Prime Video October 18th. And not only that, I reviewed the movie. He sent me a link to it. I didn't get a chance to actually see it at your festival. And they put together a poster for the movie and it has my quote from the review that I did of the movie. So, in a way, you're responsible for all of that because I wouldn't have known about the movie and certainly wouldn't have seen it had it not been for the Philip K. Dick Festival this
Yeah,
past year.
absolutely. Well, I'm glad that it's definitely a good movie. I'm glad it's doing well. I'm gonna close the window right now, because now, it's strange. I'm right next to. I want to make sure that. Oh, okay, and now we should be better.
Okay.
I happen to be like a few blocks away. Well, not maybe a stone throws away from the railroad station. It's by the river, so every
Right.
so often the train passes or something. So,
It adds a
but
background ambience, though, to
it
it.
sure does. It sure does. Especially those late night motorcycle riders.
So tell me and our viewers about your latest New York Film Festival.
Okay, well, it's this. I think this is the fifth edition of the festival. It's taking place Saturday, September 14th at Stewart Cinema and Cafe. And we are doing this because, well, Stewart Cinema is actually an independent cinema that shows first run films. If we want to go there, just since some of our filmmakers are from Brooklyn, and also to support the independent filmmaking environment. Um, the festival runs all day. It starts at 2 p.m. And it goes till 10 p.m. at night. So instead of doing 2 days with good films and filler, we decided to have one day of amazing films.
That's a
You know,
good decision.
out of
Yeah.
respect for people's time. A lot of festivals they just add filler, and our goal is to make sure that every film's a zinger. It really connects, it resonates with people, and I think it will, because we have an amazing selection of shorts that have been were selected by a program committee. As you know, some of the people in our pro are also the same programmers who help us with the PKD festival. So you're going to be a certain quality of curating associated with the festival.
That's great. Now, what's the name of it again? Because I couldn't quite make it out. The actual name of who's
Oh,
uh,
okay. It's Stewart Cinema and Cafe.
Stewart, as in Stuart.
UART, like the Stewarts. Yeah,
Got
Stewart
it.
Cinema and Cafe.
Okay.
I've known about them for about 5 or 6 years. And I thought, well, let's try this. I mean, we usually do it as you know, at the Producers Club, which is a great place, but I just want to try something different, see what comes of it.
Good. And this place is in Brooklyn. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, in Greenpoint, so it's a nice
Right.
neighborhood, kind of a laid back bohemian sort of neighborhood. Not, I think only a few blocks away from Williamsburg. So, and it's accessible via the A train and the G train, the L train. So, there are many ways of getting there.
Yeah. So you're a Brooklyn man. If I remember correctly, the Philip K. Dick Festival this past spring was in Brooklyn also, right?
Well,
Well,
actually,
part of it was
part we actually it was Queens.
Queens. Okay, great. I know
Yeah.
my geography.
Although we did start out in Brooklyn year one. I'm not. I don't. Did you? Were you? Did you? Did you
I'm
see
not
us
sure
in
when it depends what year one.
20 sorry, excuse me, 2012?
I might have been there. It's hard to
It
say. I
might
was
have
there
been. Yeah.
pretty early.
We started out in Brooklyn, and then we kind of moved around. And most recently was at Nomi.
Okay, that's right. Yeah. Come to think of it, I think the first time I came to the PKD Film Festival, it was in Manhattan. It was in Lower Manhattan, if that rings a bell. So that might have been like what, 2014 or something?
Lower Manhattan. Yeah, yeah, that was okay. Yes, that was the Tribeca.
Yeah.
That was exactly it, 2014. That was an awesome place. Unfortunately, they kind of turned it into an apartment complex afterwards. The Tribeca Cinemas,
Yeah.
awesome place, but
Did you say they
situation.
turned into an apartment complex? That's terrible.
Yes, yes,
Oh,
that's it.
God. I mean, up here in Westchester, it's not so much apartment complexes, but every decent restaurant or whatever, when they go out of business, it's replaced like by a CVS drugstore or so, as if
Yeah.
we need that many drugstores. I guess they can reliably make the most money. By the way, I was thinking about your film festivals in general. Have you seen any of the Dark Matter television series on Apple TV Plus? It's something.
No, no, I haven't, but one of our co-founders tells us raves about it. He really says it's an awesome show. I don't have Apple TV, so I'm not subscribed to it, but I heard that it's an awesome program.
It is. I started watching it pretty much a couple of days after I was at your Philip K. Dick Festival this past spring, and I couldn't help thinking, wow, this is something that if we had to pick a current television series that represents the kind of movies that you have at your festival, this would be it. This like sort of cutting edge, like science fiction with a little bit of an edge of horror in there, and you know,
Well, and that this is a good time to make an announcement to you, which is but precisely because there's so many amazing films that come through our festival, and many of them end up in some channel or just forgotten. We decided to put together a distribution company. We're calling it Dystopia Entertainment, and the focus will be to um, get it will be a compilation of shorts, which will be then streamed through various channels, so whether it be Apple or Prime Video and so on. Because a lot of these days, if you have a short, you only have Apple TV and I think Tubi. The most streamers won't even touch you if you have a 20-minute short. But if you put together a compilation, with that term it quote unquote a show, then you're able to get through so many of them. So that will probably the first one will be by the time if we do Momi again next year, we'll definitely have that compilation ready to be announced.
that's
And
great. What's the name of the company again?
oh, it's called Dystopia Entertainment.
Okay, Dystopia
Just keep an
Entertainment.
eye for that. Yeah,
I
we
love
actually that's we did we attempted to do a Comic Con back in 2019 in the West Coast, but that didn't quite work out because there were certain logistical issues. But we still have the corporate name, so we're going to use that corporate name to. That's not going to be the name of the show. The name of the show is probably going to be the Fourth Realm, and
Okay.
it definitely will be an opportunity. And the good thing about it, it will feature some stars, some people in say Edward James Olmos, uh, Keir Dullea from 2001. So you're
Oh
going to
my
see
God.
it. So it's not just films, but you'll see. I think people will be really happy with the presentation, almost like a night gallery kind of format with me or maybe another host making the presentation.
I love that. By the way, Keir Delay is also, at least in my book, but other people recognize this as well, was the star of a television series, which I think barely lasted one season, called The Star Lost, which I think Harlan Ellison had something to do with that as well. And it was a great series about the starship hurtling out there, but the people on the ship didn't even know how they got there. And unfortunately, this was like maybe in the late 1960s, and there was just no way. It was maybe initially on NBC. I'm not even sure about that, but that was the first time I saw Keir Delay, and he did a great job in that. By the way, I just want to say, apropos shorts, I'm not sure if you know this, but back in the 1990s, I had a novelette published in Analog called The Chronology Protection Case. And it was the first appearance of my New York City forensic detective, Dr. Phil D'Amato, who gets involved in strange, cases. Anyway, make a long story short, a guy by the name of Jay Kensinger made it into a short movie. And that story is in itself, I think, a wonderful story. He made it without even telling me. And then he was worried about, what am I going to do? Am I going to sue him? And he ran into the late Greg Bear, a great science fiction writer who I knew pretty well. We were, pretty good friends. And they were out in California. And Jay Kendrick said, what am I going to do? I don't want this guy to sue me. And Greg Bear said, you don't know Paul Levinson. He'll be so happy that you made this short out of one of his stories. The last thing he's going to do is sue you. And of course, Greg Bear was completely right. Anyway, to make a long story short, he made that movie in 2002. We got back to it and slightly expanded the ending around 2012, 2013. And we did manage to get it as a short up on Amazon, and it's still there on Amazon, but we couldn't get it onto Netflix because they were already saying no to
They
shorts.
were ready, yeah, yeah.
And again, so I think your company is a very, very much needed thing because a lot of the best of science fiction, look, as I'm sure you know, 12 Monkeys started out as Le Jeté, a little,
Exactly, yeah.
they were like 8 minutes long or something. And there's a lot to be said for short films. And I think,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're like they just carry a pure punch. I mean, every so often we'll have features that are good, but there's always a lot of filler in features.
yeah,
And where shorts, you only have 10 minutes or 15 or 5 minutes, and they're usually very good. So, and we've, as you know, by having covered our festival for over so many years, we've had directors from, every genre in Hollywood reaching out to us, mostly sci-fi. But we had Neil Marshall back a few years ago. Unfortunately, he submitted. You might remember his film. He was from the movie called The Descent, a feature, and it was really highly regarded when it came out years ago. But we had Neil Blomkamp. He's the one who did District 9, and he's done all these other amazing films. We've had, of course, in this compilation that we got the director of Daredevil and Buffy the Vampire Slayer in one of the films. So I think I think hopefully, because you see, right now there's a lot of saturation, but unfortunately, a lot of it is not that good. And so how do you separate the signal from the noise, right? So how do you make sure that the stuff really captures people's attention? So we are triangulating an approach that will hopefully maximize that ability to really capture attention. I mean, there's a lot of films out there. Some of them are good, but many of them are okay. Not nothing special. So especially in Netflix, I mean, a lot of the stuff is just not that great. But
no, I
every
know.
so often, yeah, you'll have shows like Dark Matter or Black Mirror, or there's another one called Dark Symmetry. No, Dark Symmetry, maybe not. No, maybe maybe I'm thinking of my own title.
Well, I'm
No,
saying it's a good title, by the way. If you
Dark
came up with that
Symmetry.
title, go for it. Dark
Dark Symmetry.
Symmetry. Are you kidding?
Yeah,
Write
Dark
it down.
Symmetry.
Write it
Yeah.
down.
So
And when it becomes a huge hit, I'm going to say, hey, you came up with this right during this interview.
yeah, and as a writer, one thing, as you being a writer, you appreciate that how we really focus a lot on this festival and PKD on writing itself, because there's the temptation with a lot of filmmakers these days is to focus too much on special effects and just or post, do it on post, or just fix it on post, and that's usually the result is exactly what you see. So writing is a really good is the beating heart. It's the central, is the motor of any good film, and without good writing and good characterization, good dialogue and acting, a lot of these films fall short. And so that's really what we're doing. This festival has a run of various shorts and features, and it also has good, has a writing kind of a script writing graphic novel competition as well.
Well, as a writer, I agree with you completely. I was thinking, M. Night Shyamalan's movies, and I just actually a couple of hours ago, I can't remember where it was, maybe the Hollywood Reporter or someplace like that, put up a list ranking M. Night Shyamalan's movies. And it's worth checking out because it provides not only a ranking of like his top 10 or top 20 movies, but good descriptions of what the movies are about. And it occurs to me that his approach to filmmaking is very Philip K. Dickian, and again,
Yeah.
this sort of like on the edge, science fiction on the edge of horror, very interesting. And I don't know if you know this, but years ago, from like 1998 to 2001, I was president of the Science Fiction Writers of America.
Okay.
And I was, and shortly after that, I was chair of my department at Fordham University, the Communications and Media Studies department. And those two experiences convinced me that I never want to do anything in administration again, because I got the least amount of writing done when I
Mm.
was doing those things. But I did learn a lot. And one of the best things that I was able to do when I was president of the Science Fiction Writers of America is give M. Night Shyamalan the award for the best movie for the Sixth Sense, which came out right around that time. And I'll never forget. I took a train down to Philadelphia, and then took a cab to this like deranged comic book store where he was filming his next movie, which I think was Unbreakable, which was also, a great movie.
Yeah, Bruce Willis and Jackson.
That's right. You can't
Right.
beat that. And of course,
No, it's a
Bruce
good
Willis was
film.
in The Sixth Sense also. And but actually, now that I'm talking about it for our viewers and again our listeners, and in case someone isn't familiar with how I process these interviews, today is Friday. What is it? September 6th, is it, or September 8th?
Six, yeah. Hmm.
Okay. So I'll have this up on YouTube either tonight or tomorrow. That is the video of our interview. But then a day or two after, I will put it up on the Light On, Light Through audio podcast. It'll be the same interview, except you won't see our faces. You won't know about my sloppy room here. And you won't know that Dan got up at the beginning of the interview to, I guess, close a window.
Close the window.
But, but
Yeah,
by the way, because it's much easier to edit out audio than it is
yeah.
video, as you well know. But what I'll do is I'm going to put a picture up which you all love, and maybe I'll somehow figure out a way to put it into this interview as well near the end. A picture of me giving M. Night Shyamalan this award. And it was the Nebula Award given by the Science Fiction Writers of America. And apropos Samuel Jackson, he was there on the set. And after I gave, and the ceremony, everyone was applauding. And after the ceremony was over, Jackson comes up to me and says, "When are you going to give Octavia Butler, an award?" And she, of course, was a great writer. And I said, "Well, don't worry, sooner or later." And she, of course, also received some major awards from the Science Fiction Writers of America. So
I,
anyway,
I I tried reaching out to Sam Delany. Remember him?
yes, I
Oh,
know him very well, as a
oh,
matter of
yeah.
fact.
I tried reaching him back. I think year two, no, year one of the PKD festival. We had Walter Mosley.
Yes.
And I really that really is so annoying because I didn't have no videotape of anything. Because back then we were just putting it live, and no one thought, "Oh, can we just have a videotape?" I thought that Momi was going to videotape it. No. So we had this interview with Walter Mosley, the director of this Mexican director, this awesome film dealing with it takes a forget you future forget this is and a couple other directors. And I invited Sam Delany, but he didn't make it. So I tried reaching out to him a couple of times, and so but yeah, it's really something else.
I have a Sam Delaney story you're going to love, and
Oh
I
yeah,
will try reaching out to him for you. First of all, so I already mentioned Dr. Phil D'Amato, whose first appearance was in the chronology
right.
protection case. And after publishing a couple of those novelettes, I decided to write a novel, and it was called The Silk Code, and it actually won the Locus Award for Best First Science Fiction Novel of 1999. In that novel, there is a character who is a librarian whose name is Ruth Delany. Now, as you well know, when you write fiction, you take things from your real life. And how did I come up with that name? When I was a student at City College, way, way back, in like from 1963 to 1967, for a year or two, I had a part-time job at the New York Public Library, and one of the places that they placed me as a page, as they called it, and then a clerk, was the George Bruce branch of the New York Public Library in Harlem. And the chief librarian there was a woman by the name of Ruth Delany. And she came over to me during one of the breaks when I was reading some science fiction novel. And she said, "Oh, I see you like science fiction." I said, "Yeah, I love science fiction." And she said, "Well, my son is a science fiction writer." I said, "Oh, yeah, tell me about him." And she said, "Well, his name is Sam Delany. He's just published a couple of novels." I hadn't heard about him then. And so all these years later, I write this novel and I put Ruth Delany in there. And the editor of Tor Books, who was the editor of this novel, the late David Hartwell, unfortunately, another person, unfortunately, no longer with us, um, he contacted Sam Delany and said, "Is it okay with you if your mother's name is in this novel that one of these new writers, Paul Levinson, were publishing his novel?" And Sam Delany says, "Well, I don't know. I'm not sure." And I had a meeting with Sam Delany, and he read the novel and said, "Okay, you treat my mother very respectfully. I'm honored that you chose her name, and you immortalized her in that way." And so over the years, I've had this relationship with Sam Delany. There was a time when we were going up to a conference called ReaderCon in Boston, and Sam Delany needed a ride up there. And so my wife and I were driving him, and there was horrible traffic on the main highway. So we got off, and we didn't have GPS in those days, and we were
Mm.
taking local roads. And Sam Delany was saying, you sure you know where you're going?" I mean, he thought he was like
Yeah, I
one
can
of
imagine Sam Delany. He's got that kind of
yeah. So,
sense.
but he's a very good guy. But if you want, I'll email him and tell him
Yeah,
you.
let's that's you give me an idea. Maybe for if we do Momi next year, we can have a panel, a whole like the 2 hour panel with Sam. Maybe we can bring in Walter Mosley. If Walter Mosley
Absolutely.
really wanted to meet Sam, he probably knows him already, but and yourself and a few others, and it will be really an awesome panel. I think that it would really bring out something that usually is not explored in the sci-fi
That would
genre.
be fabulous. And didn't Walter Mosley, and I can't remember the name of it, but it starred Samuel Jackson. It was just a one-season series, I think a year or two ago, on Apple TV Plus,
Yeah,
about an older man who's like losing his mind.
yeah, I think there was something that came out a
Yeah,
while back. Uh, he's mostly known, as you know, for his detective stories,
that's right.
criminal, but he actually has written some awesome sci-fi. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
familiar with some, it's really obviously he's coming from a different perspective than your traditional mainstream, but it's really interesting. This one has to do with zombies, but his take on zombies is very different. Then that's why I thought, yeah, let me And so let's see, because Warrington Hudlin knows Walter, and we can bring him in also as the moderator as well. Warrington is one of the trustees at MOMI. So I would, if you can, everything we can get off, we can get Walter, and you can bring in Sam Delany up with Warrington Hudlin. It could be an awesome panel, you know.
I'll get to work on this right away. So
Yeah,
when is this thing happening? Like in April
yeah,
2025?
it'll be April
Yeah.
of 2025.
All right.
A while back, a while from now. But usually these things have to be. It's good to be done way ahead of time.
Yeah, I agree. I
Uh,
agree.
but yeah, I mean that's one thing I really like about festivals when we can is have panels, because that's really, I think, the interactive component of the panel is something you won't get at home. I mean, when you're there and you can ask questions some writers and so on, um, and I think it also encourages good writing. I mean, when you hear someone like yourself or someone that's written, and they can tell, for up and coming writers, that's so vital, because unfortunately today they're almost disincentivized to do good writing. Oh, get it out yourself, don't matter, just get hire a ghostwriter, do yourself, and some good stuff. It's hard to come by, you know. and
Yeah.
and and that's why I think we try to encourage writing, whether it be text or graphic novel or illustrations and so on, because that's really critical. And there's never a shortage of good stories. I think there's a shortage or a lack of imagination of some of these filmmakers writers want to be filmmakers, but there's always a good stuff. There's so much happening today. There is so much material that you can pull from and extrapolate. It's not the same old UFO stuff or the zombies,
Yeah.
which we had plenty of, but there's a lot of new stuff and that's some of the shorts in this festival do kind of, there's one called the biodiversity, which there's been a lot of talk in certain environmental circles about siphoning off part of the country and let it just go full nature, not have humans involved, and just put humans in these little. So he kind of plays with that premise and also explores potential consequences. Uh, the one thing, and it's interesting watching films every year. Last year, for example, the PKD had a lot of shorts dealing with healing, trauma, uh, grieving, right? And because perhaps we're just still feeling the after effects of COVID. Well, this year, the shorts that we're getting, at least from the peak, the New York Sci-Fi, have to do with environmental collapse, implicating, whether it be a world where there's nothing, where everything just maybe like a Mad Max world where oil is in short supply, and the land has been desertified, so there's nothing can grow in the land, and so, or biodiversity. So we've seen that approach now. It's more of a take on how is the environment is going to impact our own humanity, you know. And I recently saw an interview with Robert Kennedy Jr.
Hmm.
He said something very interesting, which is just like, you know, there's a lot of talk about carbon tax and carbon credits, but what we really need to do is we got to support the environment because we love the environment. It's not out of love and appreciation, because the environment is what supports us and helps us help us remain human. Uh, that is, so when you have clean water, when you have fresh air, that is part of what makes us feel human. And we've seen in cities like New York, where people in some parts of the city or that's removed from parks, you can see how people become things. It impacts their whole behavior. So it really struck me that that's part of the reason. We shouldn't just try to quantify. Oh well, the reason we need to do this, do that, but it's more about keeping it because this is part of who we are. So the minute we lose our environment connection, we're already losing part of our humanity. And I thought that was an interesting point that most people usually don't bring up.
Yeah. Well, listen, I was born in the Bronx. lived in an apartment, throughout my whole childhood. Got married to my wife, Tina. She grew up in the Bronx, maybe about a 10, 15-minute ride from where I grew up. We lived in the Bronx. We had both our kids living in the Bronx in an apartment building. But my goal was always to get some kind of private home with some land around it for the
Yeah.
very reason you're talking about. Because, I mean, look, it's very convenient living in an apartment building. I mean, you know, you don't have to worry about a lot of things. The superintendent takes care of it and so on. But I always felt it was like missing, something. And so finally in 1992, we moved up here to Westchester. And I remember our daughter was upset because she, had friends back in the Bronx and, didn't want to move. But our son realized right away. He said, "Look, you don't understand. We're going to have our own land, around us,"
Yeah.
which was a very, wise insight. And I think that people do need to be more connected, to the natural world in whatever way, they can. The water is like that too. If you're lucky enough to live near the ocean or a bay or the lake, and that water becomes part of your life, you go
It is.
swimming, you
So
go
yeah.
boating in it. It gives you a connection to the living world, which you otherwise wouldn't have.
Right.
And it is good that science fiction explores those things in terms of what happens when you don't have that or when those things go wrong.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. There is definitely a connection, and I would see science fiction writing or whether it be writing or film as a kind of a homing device on what's on the periphery of our consciousness, what's either not being addressed directly, or what are the concerns that we're not really, many of us are not focused 100%. Like in the 1950s was more about the Red Scare, so we had the flying saucers. So every generation has different concerns, and this reflected in whether it be horror or science fiction. And of course, science fiction, I think, is taken front seat because so much of it is in the last 10 years, right? Whether it be time travel, really, or genetic engineering, or AI, or uh, stuff that really would have been regarded as science fiction was 20 years ago. And like I said in the film, what was that name of that film with Arnold Schwarzenegger? Um, what was that?
Not Terminator.
No, Total Recall.
Oh, Total Recall is
Remember when he
great.
goes into the driverless cab?
Yeah. Yes.
We had, instead of a cab, we had the little robot. Well, we're already seeing that today. So,
Yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall. Give those people air. That was right. Give those people air. That's like when he's on Mars. Like the whole thing revolved around they needed oxygen on Mars, and the bad
right,
guys were trying to deprive them of oxygen. That was a great movie. Well, it's a Philip K. Dick story,
Philip K.
obviously,
Dick, yeah.
and Schwarzenegger did a good job in that movie.
That's why he doesn't really. He continues to surprise people. I mean, PKD. I mean, he continues to write with
Yes.
the writings and so on. So, on our end, what we're trying to do is just keep the legacy alive in any way we can. Most of the writing, obviously, is protected and by the estate. There are some stories that are in the for public domain, and we've actually shown some film adaptations of those stories. But most of the writing is in the public, is in private, in the private, and it's well protected. So, but it's really part of I think keeping the legacy going. For instance, H.P. Lovecraft, right? I mean, you can do anything on that because I believe that everything is in already in the public domain, just about, or everything. So you see, some films are good, some of them the quality varies really significantly
Yeah.
from short story to short story film to short story film.
Well, I still think to this very day that The Man in the High Castle on Amazon Prime, the TV series that actually Frank Spotnitz put together in the first place, and he directed the first couple of seasons, and then for reasons that are not completely clear, at least to me, he left. Um, and I have actually an interview, I'll put a link to it, with Rufus Sewell, who played one of the main characters in that television series. That's an example of, I think, Philip K. Dick done very, very well. And his daughter did play, she actually has credit as one of the
Yeah, I think she like
executive
produced
producers.
right. Did you meet you got to meet Arnold Chung that day? Or did you leave before he came in?
I left pretty much right after the panel,
Oh, okay,
unfortunately.
because he came in, he was had a smaller role in the Man of the High Castle.
Yeah.
Not sure what season though. There's so many of it, but I think he played the son of the Japanese guy.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. The
Yeah,
Japanese guy was, right. The guy who was in San Francisco, who,
right. Playing
he was,
with
yeah,
the I Ching and so on.
that's right.
And Spotness take was the best because in a way it kind of reflected PKD's ambivalent idea of writing too much about Nazis because after a while he just got sick and tired writing it and he just didn't want to go too dark. And that's why the book kind of is not quite, the ending is kind of incomplete.
I agree.
And but that was people said, why don't you just do another one? I said, no, I'm done with that, done with that.
Yeah.
But he already, and so, but unfortunately, Hollywood being Hollywood, oh well, let's do season 2, 3, and 4, and until they just kill it. But the
Yeah.
first
Well,
one was good. The
yeah.
first,
Well, I agree with you. And in fact, Rufus Sewell agrees with us that basically, I mean, without giving too much away, they developed Rufus Sewell's character, Smith, very, very deliberately over the first few seasons.
right?
But then in the last season, they just went in a completely different direction, as if they hadn't even developed the character. And again, I don't want to be any more specific than that in case anyone hasn't seen it. It's still worth seeing, but whoever it was who directed that last season completely lost the thread of this.
Yeah, but there's another film that came out in I think the late '90s. It was called Fatherland.
Yes,
It
that
was
was very good. And
Harris,
the book is the 1980s. Harris,
yeah,
I think.
Harris, yeah, and it wasn't bad with Rucker Howard,
Yes.
Man of the High, from Blade Runner.
Yeah.
So
That
I'm
was,
sure that whoever wrote Fatherland, I mean Harris, Richard Harris, I think
is
was
it Robert Harris or Richard
Robert
Harris?
had he
Right, right.
probably was he probably had read The Man of the High Castle
Oh,
because
I'm
the
sure
fact
that
that
he,
he got Rutger Hauer as an actor
yeah.
playing, I'm sure there was some
And
kind of
a poster, as you well know, in a movie is worth like 1,000 words. Just that scene, and they put this in the trailer when they're showing Berlin in the 1960s in the Fatherland movies, and you see this chilling poster, Das Beatles, right? The Beatles, and of course, the best alternate realities always have like some resemblance, some echoes from our realities. So, of course, the Beatles did spend a lot of time in Hamburg in our reality, and they were
right.
known in Germany. But in Fatherland, he ups the ante a little bit, and they become like really famous, in Germany to the point where you see this
And
poster.
I think the idea of using the I Ching and film as to illustrate that there's an alternative reality, I think is absolutely brilliant in the part of PKD because these are artifacts that are not necessarily associated with sci-fi. You know, it's like okay, you can see an alternative reality is that there's film footage from an alternative universe. Right there is like you would most sci-fi writers today wouldn't think of that. They would say, well, no, it has to be some weird transmission that we're looking picking it up on a cyclotron or something. But no,
Yeah,
no, it's just like a film. And
yeah,
then the guy doing his readings and that readings that incorporates elements that are more of a philosophical and speculative nature than just pure technical in nature. So, and I think that what makes this PKD's writing interesting. I thought that especially some of his works, he combines back in the 80s, as you remember, there was a lot of interest in the powers of developing the powers of the mind. So you have these clear, like obviously, and Minority Report, the precogs, the three women who are suspending in a vat of some strange liquid, but they're clairvoyants. So a lot of today's sci-fi tends to go with mostly with more the technical aspect, singularities and cyclotrons or hadron colliders, and not so much with the unification of both mind or consciousness and technology. It seems that, but there were a lot of films in the 80s. Remember Scanners?
Yeah, that was an excellent movie.
With
I just want to make this point before I forget it. One of the excellent things, and this is another respect in which I thought actually the television series was even better than the original Philip K. Dick novel. The Grasshopper story, these alternate realities, you actually see them in newsreels. And there's something really nice about that. And in fact, at the beginning, pretty much as part of the introduction of every episode, you hear like that clicking of like an old newsreel, like you're in an old theater in the
yes,
1940s.
yes.
And because look, seeing something with your own eyes is a lot more impressive and stunning than reading about what it looks like, which is indirect. So Philip K. Dick had no choice. He couldn't actually put a newsreel directly. He could have described the newsreel in his novel, but we couldn't actually see the
Yeah.
newsreel per se. And I thought that was an excellent thing that the
Now,
series.
what would be really interesting would be a film that uses that, Philip K. Dick's writings, it intrinsically is psychedelic. The way the words are put together, the use of this, that in a film format. So, and no one has done that as far as I know. Maybe in some offshoot experimental dialogue, but you're watching a film, you're watching the actors talk, and everything is normal, quote unquote. There's no, but their dialogue is a little bit off-putting. It's like something strange is going on. That would be, I always felt that's a way of taking the cinematic to the next level, because the focus is on special effects created by sight and sound. But what about the dialogue itself becomes the syntax of the dialogue begins to be just like PKD did that, or James Joyce would say. That would be pretty interesting because I don't see too much of that going on. Like Alejandro Jodorowsky, when he wanted to redo a Dune, his idea, and you saw the documentary, which was, I want to make a film that feels like an acid trip.
Yep.
Yeah, and generally the way those are done, like Gaspar Noé's what was it? What was the name of that film? Where by the guy has a dissociative experience, out of body. I forget now. One of his amazing films. But most of the films that attempt to do that tend to rely on a lot of special effects. Even The Matrix was philosophically very interesting, but it seems to be that part seems to be very academic. What is reality? What is not reality? But the wording, and I think that's where Philip K. Dick is, makes a difference, say someone like Asimov, which is great, is that the wording itself is like, it's a little bit like a word salad at times. It's like, I remember when I was reading Ubik, and I started reading after like the 10th page, I started feeling a bit weird. So what's going on? And it's just that you actually read the word, it is intrinsically psychedelic.
Well, apropos psychedelic, I am going to see Metropolis one way
Oh,
or another.
yes.
Francis Ford Coppola's. I think it's just opening in several places, and a lot of major distributors turned it down, which I find unbelievable. I mean, how bad can it be that they turned it down?
It's shocking. It's shocking. But at least they did get, was a new cinema,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Lionsgate, or was a new cinema? I think
It was not Lionsgate for
it
sure.
was new cinema. I think
Yeah, I
it
think so.
was.
I'm not even sure about that.
Yeah, no, it's. I think filmmaking these days is especially what comes out of Hollywood. Like at Spielberg, at one point he had to, and he's fairly up there, and he had to really push hard to get some of his films made. They
Yeah,
wanted to go straight to streaming. That's like, oh, and it's all the idea of the fight between the suits and the directors, right? Yeah, no, go streaming. I don't want to lose another $100 million.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it begs the question: why should you have to spend $100 million on a feature on a film these days? You could easily do for 20, 25. But that's become a lot of these because I think the reliance is again on more special effects and strange sounds and sound design. But I think if we can retrench. I think, in my opinion, with good writing, and we go back to the days with $20 million. I just wrote so recently again 3 Days of the Condor, right?
That's a great movie.
Awesome film,
Yeah.
amazing acting, amazing writing. Not a it's not like and that's the kind of thing we need to go back to because I think there's been a loss of confidence on the part of a lot of film producers. Oh no, this is another $400 million film. I don't want to. But then again, they got to look at the product they're putting out. A lot of this stuff is not that provocative. It's focused on very niche audiences, like the new film with what's that came out. I was surprised, but there was Deadpool and Wolverine
Hmm.
made $1 billion.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, but other films might not be able to. But again, there's some good stuff coming out of Cannes though this year. I want to catch it. There are a couple of films I definitely want to catch, including Metropolis.
Have you seen the first season of Three Body Problem? I think it's on. I'm not sure.
No, I haven't. Where is that? Is that in
It's either on net. Well, I'm not. It's a so it's a series. It's a TV series. It's not.
Yes,
So it's not in theaters. It's either on Netflix or Amazon Prime.
I
But
gotta check it out. Yeah,
yeah,
I do have Netflix now. I didn't have it for a while, but again, the same friend who told me about the Aldo. You might have met him, Aldo. He was at the PKD festival.
yeah, the name sounds familiar.
Aldo, the same one who told me about Dark Matter.
A nice smart
Told
guy.
me about three. Yeah, he says that's a good film.
It is. It was very good. There was a lot of. I mean, it's a fascinating film because film. It's a fascinating series and a fascinating series of novels as well, because it's the author is Chinese, and there's some criticism of the Chinese government
Is he?
there.
Does he live in the U.S. or he's still in?
I think he's still in China, and
Oh,
he he's playing a dangerous game.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I, I haven't actually read the written novel, but in the first season of the television series, it correctly depicts the Chinese government as putting ideology, having the correct ideology ahead of scientific discovery.
Right.
It's a dangerous thing to do for a variety of reasons. But yeah, listen, China is, it used to be called the sleeping giant, but it's awoken
Oh, working. And I
already.
want to add to this though. I received some shorts this year. They're not on our programming, but they're from China, and the stuff that they're putting out, it's really, really very, very personal. So, mainland China, with one of them has to do with a futuristic place where the culture where AI is ubiquitous, but there's this older woman who still wants to maintain human relations with her son and grandson, and so I think there are good, really cool, good, very smart filmmakers coming out of there.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Fortunately, the government probably doesn't even care about these little guys you're putting out. On the other hand, this fellow, who knows? They might, uh, put him on probation.
yeah, you never know. But yeah, put some of them in one of your upcoming festivals. Okay, listen, it's great talking to you
Absolutely.
as always. And again, we'll have this video up on YouTube either later tonight or tomorrow. And you're doing great things.
Well, thanks, and I hope we can make this get this reunion going with hopefully, knock on wood, by next year we have Delany and Mosley and yourself and Morton Hudlin. And that would be an awesome panel because I think that it would be, it would be interesting to see, and it's what adds makes these things different. So you want to ultimately, in my book, is when you go to a festival, you walk away with inspiration because oh yeah, there's still something that we could do. The very fact that we're having this conversation, I'm inspired,
Me
because
too.
I do think there's a lot of stuff that can be done with sci-fi and that it hasn't been tapped on. And we that's our goal to really get the word out, to keep people inspired. And when we talk with others like-minded and this is bouncing ideas off each other, that's when good stuff starts. That's when the magic happens.
I agree. I agree completely. And I'm going to put at the top of my list of things to work on getting this panel to happen in reality.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Let's make that happen.
let's make that happen.
And for your listeners, I think that, I'm sure you're going to put a link, but it's the New York Sci-5fest.com. That's our website. And that's for those who want to catch tickets and times. And there'll be a good number of filmmakers present for Q&A afterwards, too.
All right, great. And send me that link anyway in text so I can easily put it into the
Absolutely.
video and put it into the podcast show notes. So this is probably, I don't know, the fourth or fifth time I've interviewed you. We always get great response on it, and we'll continue doing this and working on that panel and do all sorts of other exciting things. And in our own nefarious ways, do what we can to improve the world and get more attention paid to some of these great short science fiction movies.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for having me on your show. And again, let's work on reuniting for our next festival.
All right. Take care then.
Thanks. You have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.